I think this next part, the last part, number 4, solution and action steps, are probably the most powerful that you're going to write for this case study. Let's kind of rewind a little bit and remember from my first video in the first part where we talk about the summary, about how we talked about how family engagement is really the foundation of everything that we do in special education. Not only is it legal, but it's best practice, and it makes everything better. It's an investment of time, but it makes everything better. So let's take Matthew and specifically Mrs. Winters and talk about that a little bit. And you're welcome to use some of my ideas, but I'd like you to kind of flesh them out when you write about them. This is what I call a huge red flag timeline. Family is so incredibly important, and I've included a chapter that I wrote for a text about families as a resource you can skim. It's probably about 18 pages long, but it takes that river analogy and it walks you all the way through where if you spend time at the open house, not being too busy to maybe set an appointment to talk to this family about their IEP, or make sure at least that there's a special education professional reaching out. So upstream at the open house, working on reaching out to this family, or at least during the first 2 weeks of school, making sure that somebody is investigating this new student with an IEP and communicating with the family and being transparent and building some team and relationship items so that when the meeting is called with Mrs. Winter and Matthew is really struggling, it does not go down like it did. It's a huge, it's not just a red flag. She's straight up breaking the law in her meeting. She refuses accommodations. She says there's no room for Matthew to see the speech teacher because the speech teacher's too busy. She claims he's going to fail 4th grade. And this is predetermination. Mrs. Winters has decided that this is not going to work on her own, sounds like, and end of story, not going to happen. This is a red flag the size of our state. This is a problem. So this can go 2 different directions. One, someone can step in and help Mrs. Winters. Sit down with the family, backtrack, try to repair what was said at that meeting, or just straight up apologize for what was said at that meeting. Something has been missed. Either maybe Mrs. Winters isn't getting the special ed support she needs. Maybe she doesn't know and has never had an IEP. We don't know, but somebody needs to fix that right away and start this family relationship down the correct path. Maybe it does mean a new IEP. They need to get the forms back out and as a team decide that they're going to set an IEP date in the future, have a new IEP and do their due diligence in between. Someone's got to go down that path, number 1. That's the best path that can happen. I'm giving you lots of hints here about recommended course of action. There's another option. If the school doesn't step in and make sure something happens to repair what has been said in that meeting, I can tell you right now that family is headed straight down a path of facilitated IEP meetings and special ed meetings, mediation, and state complaint and due process. They're going to dispute this because they have a legal IEP, a binding IEP, a legal document that the school employee is refusing to do. This path happens so often. It's not always this obvious, but this path happens so often, and we sit down and we talk about it afterwards. I've been involved with state complaints. We talk about it afterwards, and we can identify parts of the timeline where if someone had just stepped in, honored that family's feelings, frustrations, and brought them in to be part of the team and just slowed everybody down and said, what can we do to make this work for this kiddo? Adopt more of a charity model for this kiddo? What barriers can we take down? What accommodations and modifications can we put in place? Then it won't go down that second path of dispute resolution. So you may choose. You may go extreme. You may fast forward a year and decide they're in state complaint and talk about that. I'd much rather see you, for your future as an educator, talk about what you can do to stop this landslide. This is a landslide into a river, right? There are definitely 2 paths that could happen here. I want to tell you that this is one of the best case studies I've read because I was involved in almost this exact situation, and it was even fourth grade, for a student in another neighboring state. I was the advocate. I was a volunteer advocate. I sat in all the meetings. We did everything we could to get the school to provide it was a fourth grade kiddo with ADHD and learning disabilities and an auditory processing disorder. We did everything we could to get the fourth grade teacher to honor and show us that those accommodations in the IEP were being used. Teacher wouldn't do it, and the teacher was, the district felt, I'm going to say this as politically as correctly as I can, but it was a very powerful teacher, a veteran teacher that had decided their way was the only way, and the school just did simply not have the bandwidth to fight the teacher. So we went all the way through state complaint procedures, and they found the school at fault. Step in, do everything that you can to reverse what's happening and adopt a more charity model. As a special education professional, that's what we do. And we might have to go to administration for help to do it, but it's what we do. So go ahead and wrap this one up. I'm hoping you'll step in, maybe with both paths, if they need to go both paths, or you could talk about both. But there's a lot here to talk about number 4. It should be very easy to write about. If you have any questions about our resources, I tried to put resources after my videos on the slides, or any questions about this case study, please reach out and let me know.